video we're going to be going over chapter 39, and 39 is going to be the chapter in which we focus on what we call place constructions. Place constructions are the forms of cities, towns, small islands, the word for house, domus domus, the word for countryside, rus ruris, and the word for ground, humus humi, and how they do not need prepositions to indicate going towards them. You merely put them in the accusative case. You don't need a preposition ob or away from them. You merely put in the ablative case. And then, as we're going to see, when you want to be in or at that location, you do not use in plus an ablative, in the whatever. Instead, you're just going to put it in the locative case. And I have another short video that explains exactly what that locative case is going to look like. So let's go ahead and get started. As per usual, there'll be embedded items, and so therefore 2 birds, 1 stone. Just for watching, you get a 100, and obviously, hopefully it helps you on the multiple choice and vocabulary when eventually we take them. So, postquam Marcus finem recitandi fecit. After Marcus, made, did make, has made. Facio facere feci factus has the perfect tense fake ending, and then e isti it. So perfect stem and a perfect ending. Has made, did make, an end of reciting. Recitandi is a gerund, not a gerundive. A gerund, remember, is a verbal noun. Excuse me, it has one of the 4 gerund forms, and it is not modifying anything. So an end of the act reciting. And so therefore, after Marcus made an end of the reciting, remember he in the last chapter was reciting book 2 of the Aeneid, the teacher said, Ili versus, those verses. Because it's modified by ili, versus, as you should be aware, is going to have one of the 3 endings with long us of the 4th declension, and it is that one right there, nominative plural, because it is functioning as the subject. Those verses, bene recitati sunt, have been, were recited well, perfect and passive. Nunc dic mihi hoc, now tell this neuter accusative singular thing to me. Mihi, that's your accusative direct object. It goes, of course, hic, haec, hoc, genitive, huius, 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 dative, wick, 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 and the accusative, hung, hung, hoc. And remember that dic is really from the word dicere. Usually, to speak, what you would do is that you take off the re to make a singular imperative, but dic, duke, fac, and fair had an e, but it isn't there. And so it is the command, speak or tell this to me. Quote means how many, like quota. How many words are in the primo versu, are in the first verse, as it were. We go back and look, obviously, at what we are referencing, and there it is. Conticuere omnes intenti quora tenebat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 if you were to include the que, but we'll see whether they include the que or not. And we see in the answer, quinque. So they did not include the que, which is the enclitic and 5. Then the teacher again asked, said, quote, in secundo verso, but how many in the second verse? And we go back and look again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and let's see if they come up with an answer. Octo. Quid de verbo canticuere mihi dicere potes. What? Quid means what, of course. Are you able, s pot, s-r-u, and then pot is that prefix that means able, to tell to me about the word canticuere. And so what he's pointing out, this ancient teacher, is the same thing as a modern teacher like me would point out, is that when we look at it, it looks like an infinitive, but it is not, because we see the letter U indicating that that is a perfect stem, meaning that's your alternate ending erunt instead of ere, and so they became silent, they did become silent, and so he's quizzing them over the same recognition that it is not an infinitive that I would do to my modern students. And their response, conticuere, is the same. Remember, is, id with the dem is going to be the same. Ac, idem ac together is going to mean the same as. It's kind of an idiom, as it were. And conticuerunt, and there you see it with the non-alternate ending perfect stem, e isti it, imis istis erunt. Seek, in, thus away, or such, or thus. Poets often write the word. Now please note that that is not a bi. Instead, scribe is your present stem, that u is merely your present vowel, and the nt is your present ending. Bene respondisti. You responded, did respond, have responded well. And so the teacher then says, et tu, Ale, and you, Aulus, talking directly to him, vocative case, dig mihi hoc, tell this to me, same as what we saw up there. Qui sunt omnes? Who are the all? Again, to reference what he's talking about, in that it says in that first line, all became silent, did become silent, alternate ending, and so he wants to know who these all are. And so the answer, obviously, the Trojani, the Trojans, una, together, cum with an ablative, with the queen and the companions. An important word here, comitibus, in that it comes from the nominative, comes, which is the variant form, that is not an ending, and the genitive, comitis. And so we're going to see comites a little bit later on, right there above it. That is the merely stem plus your nominative plural ending on the end of it. And so therefore, he says the Trojans together with the queen and the companions, the friends. Ubi sunt hi homines? Where are these all? And the response of the student, in Africa. So in Africa. So why does Africa have a preposition plus a ablative? Because it's not a city, town, or small island. It's a landmass that is a continent. Then he goes on to ask, quo in loco. Quo is modifying loco, and it's obviously modified, or not modified, it has the preposition in what place? And now we see here the locative case, Carthagini. And so therefore, whereas we have to say in Africa with a preposition, when it's a city, town, or small island like Carthage, you don't, and it is merely in Carthage or at Carthage. This is the locative case, and that's the form of the locative for that particular word, which is an exception to the rule. We will learn more about that in the other short video. Unde, from where or whence. So whence did Aeneas come? The reason I know it is did come is that's my perfect stem with a long E. Venia, venire, Veni ventus. So again, venia, venire, Veni ventus, telling me obviously if that E were not long, it would have been present tense comes, but it is not. So from where did Aeneas come? And that's our first word to be embedded. Unde. U-N-D-E. Your first item is unde. Continuing on, he just answers Troia. Again, because Troy is a city, town, or small island, we do not need the word ab or ah. Instead, we just merely, since it's going to be motion away from, put it in the ablative case. And so you translate it from Troy. Makes sense because obviously ablatives can translate by, with, because of, from, in, on, at. And so here, again, the ablative, by, with, because of, from, in, on what journey did he sail? And again, ablative, from Troy. And the answer of the student, primum ad Siciliam venit. First, he came, did come, has come to Sicily. Why does Sicily have a preposition? It's a big island, not a city, town, or small island. Dende, then, he actus est. Now, actus by itself would be having been driven, but once you add a form of the verb to be with it, it was driven, has been driven, and it is the subject he. He was driven, has been driven by a storm in the ablative case, and since Carthage is again a city, town, or small island, there is no need for the preposition ad. It is merely going to be the city or town or small island in the accusative case. Thus we know to translate it to Carthage. He was driven to Carthage. Tamen, and this is now the teacher again talking. However, you omit, from meta omittere, misi misus with om on the front of it, you omit, you are omitting many neuter, plural, accusative things. That's your direct object, substantively, about this story. For Aeneas and his companions, remember that que is the equivalency of an et in between, or the word before, like an et of the que to which it is attached. So, for Aeneas and the companions were wandering, duration of time and extent of space is always expressed in accusative case for the duration many years, for many years, before they came, they did come, they have come, perfect tense, to Sicily. Again, you gotta have a preposition because Sicily is not a city, town, or small island. Again, this chapter is really emphasizing through Aeneas' travels the nature of whether it's a city, town, or small island and needs a preposition or not when it is not a city, town, or small island. first, and then I gotta go find my verb, and I find it navigaverunt. They sailed, they did sail, they have sailed, perfect tense, to Thrace, not a city, town, small island, needs a preposition. Then to Delos. Delos is a small island, a teeny tiny island in the Aegean Sea, which is between Greece and modern day Turkey, Asia, and thus it does not need. So needs it with not a city, town, small island, a city, town, small island does not need the preposition. Then they sailed again to Crete, again, not a small island, thus it needs a odd as a preposition. And so the question that becomes, why did Aeneas? Now, the verb that is here, moratus, is the verb that is deponent, moror, and morari, and moratus. Sum, it means wait, delay, or stay. And so here it is going to translate, even though it looks like a perfect passive, you translate it perfect active. Why did Aeneas stay? Why has Aeneas stayed? Nowhere. Nusquam. Nusquam means nowhere. Marcus, talking directly to him, vocative case. And then the response by Marcus in quotations. Perfect tense, or not perfect, perfect passive participle from your verb. Moneo, monere, monui, monitus, to warn or advise. That's where we get the word admonish. And it's the perfect passive participle, modifying my understood subject, he. Having been warned, adis, by the gods, a personal agent, Aeneas always was seeking Hesperia. For he was wanting, he wanted to establish, to found, condo, condere, conditi, conditus. It's where we get, of course, the title of Livy's masterwork, The History of Rome, ab urbe condita. It is the perfect passive participle of that, having been founded, from the city having been founded. For he was wanting to found, to establish a Noam Troiam, a new Troy. Your second item embedded is that word that is there, condere. C-O-N-D-E-R-E. Please spell it correctly. Omnes discipuli. All the students were listening attentively to the teacher. They were hearing the teacher attentively. Praeter sextum, except Sextus, who was sleeping. Now this is not sleeping, but rather was nodding off. Remember that you can take the fourth principal part of a verb, like dormio, dormire, dormivi, dormitus, and take that as the new stem of a verb, dormito, dormitare, and it is a frequentative verb. And so it is not just to sleep, but rather to sleep repeatedly, and that's why I like to translate it as to nod off. And so therefore Sextus, who was nodding off, who was being sleepy. When the teacher noticed whom. Again, this is a linking qui, and you could easily replace it with honk, same case, number, gender from higakoke, accusative, accusative, or illum, same case, number, and gender, accusative, masculine, or eum. So, when the teacher noticed this guy, that guy, him, he shouted, Sextus, expergiscere. This is a deponent verb. Expergiscor, expergisci, expertus est. I think I got that wrong. I could have gotten the third principal part wrong. I apologize. But nevertheless, for a deponent verb, the imperative, which is the command, looks like a present active infinitive if it exists. And so therefore, it is the imperative. He says, wake up, dic mihi, tell to me, ubi est Hesperia. Where is Hesperia? On to the next page, and we'll see Sextus's response. Hesperia? Non est Graecia. Non, remember, expects a yes answer, the opposite of which would have been the word num. So that would be surely, surely not. Surely it is Greece, right? Because of the none. And the response from the teacher, minime o puer abominande, leastly, O abominable boy, in the vocative case. Puer does not change, because remember, for the vocative, it only is going to change if the second declension word ends with US, it turns to an E, hence why O abominandus turns to abominande, modifying that vocative puer. Hesperia est Italia. Hesperia is Italy. Now this is your impersonal word, interest, where we get the word interest. It means it is important, and he puts a nihil with it as a nothing. This nil is really nihil. And so colloquially or idiomatically you can say it is not important, or literally it is nothing important. Sextus mater. At maxime interest. But it is important most greatly. Not magnopere, greatly. Not magis, more greatly, but maxime. But it is important most greatly. The teacher responded. I know that it is a responded because it is a second conjugation verb, and even though the present stem, respond, is exactly the same as the perfect stem, since it's second conjugation, its present vowel would be an E, and then your ending T. He responds versus he responded. The teacher responded. The teacher, having been moved, perfect passive participle, by the greatest superlative anger. He, and again, I'm going to skip ferulam as my accusative. That is the Latin word for a cane, a new verb, or I should say a new vocab word in this chapter, and go to sumsit, which comes from, and I thought it's also a new word, sumo, sumere, sumpsi sumptus, meaning to take up. He took up, did take up, has taken up, perfect stem plus perfect ending, his cane, and by, with, because of, from, in a terrible voice, ablative of manner, he shouted, extende manum, extend your hand, sextus, vocative case. Ceteri discipuli conticuerunt. That same verb that described what the members of the dinner party did at Dido's dinner party. They became silent when, at the beginning of Book 2, Aeneas began to tell the story of the fall of Troy. The rest of the students, the remaining students, ceteri, which is where we get, of course, etc and cetera, and the remaining neuter plural things. Here it is not neuter because it's modifying scibili. The remaining students, the rest of the students, became silent. At sextus grammatico non paruit. Paruit comes from the verb not paro parare, but pareo parere. And of course the third principal part, parui, and there it is, the perfect stem, the perfect ending, but it means to obey, and it takes a dative because it's one of the special verbs that when you obey someone, you are giving obedience to them. But sextus, ad sextus, did not obey the dative teacher. Dative because that verb requires it. I will not extend. AM, almost exclusively of what we have seen so far, is going to be nothing more than the long E of a third conjugation verb, meaning future, turning into an A because of the M ending. I will not extend. And by the way, that is your third item, that to be put in for the easy 100. It's paruit. P-A-R-U-I-T. Paruit. Spell it correctly, no long marks. Grammatica stupuit. The teacher gaped. He was dumbfounded. Longum fuit silentium. There was, there has been, sum esse fui, a long silence, long was or has been the silence. Nobody disobeys the teacher, and here is Sextus blatantly disobeying. Tandem clamat. At last he shouts, Abi puer, go away, boy. Again, wokas, nothing but the infinitive, with the RE chopped off. Call the tutor Eucleides. Ille, that guy, referring to Eucleides, will lead. How do I know that it is will lead? Duco, ducere. And thus I can see the short ERE of the third conjugation. Whenever you have an E in a third conjugation, it's going to be future. He will lead you home. Home is like city, town, or small island. You don't need the preposition odd. Merely when you're going to it, you put it in the accusative case. And so, this is the worst punishment that one could have, because now he's going to have to go home and deal with Cornelius. I have suffered. Again, pati or pati, possessum, a deponent verb, so it looks passive, translates actively. Enough, satis, of your procacity. Procacity means stubbornness or insolence. We had the word that was the adjective earlier, prococcus, in the chapter that featured Pseudolus. And then what you can do very often, you can take these adjectives and turn into what I like to call tas tatus nouns, in which it would be prococci procas, which in English very often what you do is replace the as with a y and you get yourself an English word, procacity, which is again insolence or stubbornness, and that is then the adjective insolent or stubborn. Nevertheless, continuing on, we're almost done. I have suffered enough of your insolence. I forbid, vetare, I disallow or forbid, that's why we get the word veto, you to go back here or to go back to this place unless, if not, and this can mean either one, you will want to work. I know that it is will, even though it is the regular verb. Wolo, wele, and you can see from the infinitive, that is not any sort of regular A-R-E or long A-R-E, long E-R-E, short E-R-E, or long I-R-E, instead if it's regular. But remember that wolo, pharaoh, and nolo all want to be third conjugation in the imperfect and future. And so an E on that verb is going to get a future, unless you will want to work, if you will not want to work. And so I forbid you that way. Nunc abi, now go away. Ceteri discipuli, the remaining students were terrified. Now please note that teriti errant is not a periphrastic. It is merely that this is a regular old adjective. It is not necessarily the fourth principal part, and so therefore I'm treating it as merely the imperfect of the verb to be, aramarasarat. They were terrified by the ablative words of the teacher. Nunquam antia, never before had. Of course, whenever you pair an imperfect with a perfect passive participle, creating a pluperfect passive verb, the translation in English is had. Never before had a boy been passively sent home. And again, you don't need an odd, because city, town, small island, the word for home, the word for countryside, which is rus, ruris, neuter, and the word for ground, humus, there it is, and humi, all are allowed, no prepositions, and when you want to go towards it, accusative, away from it, ablative, and at it is going to be then the locative case. Your fourth and final item is simply the word for enough, satis, S-A-T-I-S, satis. So thanks for watching, hopefully this has helped you, and you will be more prepared now for chapter 39.